Hello. Thank you for coming to my presentation. My name is Vladimir Katalov. I work for Elcomsoft company based in Moscow, Russia. And today I wanted to tell you about our experience in the iOS acquisition and what methods are available and which one of them works best and how to select the proper one and what you can get and what you cannot get and so on. First of all, I guess most of you are using not the usual phones anymore, but the smartphones, and using them for storing both the personal information and the business information as well. And the bring your own device concept is also widely popular now, and many of the companies providing their smartphones and tablets to their employees, and so the business critical information is also in the smartphone. And I will concentrate today on the iOS devices, iPhones and iPads. And if you look what information is available in the iPhone, there is quite a lot. Not just contacts you use to call someone, but also the complete call log, the numbers you have dialed, and the calls you have received. And not only for the phone calls, but also for the voice over IP calls, for Skype, Viber, WhatsApp, and whatever. There is also quite a lot of the documents stored basically on any smartphone device. And there are also the passwords stored in the iOS keychain, and there is your web browsing history, the searches you have made, and all the browsers starting from the Safari and also using the Chrome or whatever your most favorite one. There is quite a lot of third-party application data using this, including the social network, the banking and financial applications, and the password managers, third-party password managers, and most of the applications that are using the internet. They're also storing the cached internet data, including the cookies and the copies of the pages you have visited and the cached pages and so on and so forth. And of course, there is information such as logs created by the operating system itself and the third-party applications running on the iOS device. Speaking of iOS forensics, just a couple of words what forensic is. It's more like a police term used by the law enforcement people describing how the law enforcement should extract the information from the digital devices, how to prevent them from modifying, how to extract as much as they can, and then how to analyze that data and how to extract the evidence, which is most commonly used now. It's hard to assume the criminal person that don't use some smartphone device. Some of the most smart criminals are using the very simple and very old phones, which are not smartphones. But still, most of them are using the smartphones, including the iPhone. And first you have to do, and you have to prevent the data from modifying when the device is seized, and to prevent the remote wiping of the device. And then you have to select the proper method to extract as much as you can from the device. And several methods exist, including the logical acquisition, physical acquisition, extracting the information from the device backups stored on Mac or Windows computers, and also nowadays one of the most popular methods is analyzing the information stored in the cloud. That's not only Apple iCloud. Most of the vendors are using cloud nowadays. All the Android smartphones are using Google Cloud, although you might think you don't use it, but you do. And even the Chinese vendors, that are really many of them, and they're also using their own clouds because Google Cloud and Google services are prohibited in China, but still most of the vendors use their own storages, and they're syncing quite a lot of data. But today we'll speak only about the Apple iCloud. First of all, there are some methods that are commonly used for some other devices, but they don't work on the iPhone. You probably heard about the JTAG. Does somebody of you know what is JTAG? Okay, yeah, just a couple. That's connecting to a special debug port that is available on many of the devices, but not on the iPhone. And that method allows extraction of the memory, or just of the memory chip. And the other similar method is chip off, when you physically disconnect the chip, and you'll destroy the device, but that doesn't matter for extracting the evidence. You get the chip out of the device, connected to the special hardware, and using special command to read everything bit by bit, the memory from that chip. For iOS, you can obviously do that. There is nothing special about the memory chips used in iPhones, but you won't be able to decrypt the data ever, because the iPhone, starting from the iOS version 4, using the full disk encryption, and the encryption key used to encrypt all the data on the memory chip is relies not on the unique hardware key, but also on the passcode that protects the device. And so you won't be able to decrypt the data without breaking the passcode. And just bypassing the screen lock, the passcode lock also won't help, because all the information stored there in the iOS devices is encrypted. First of all, about the preserving the evidence and not allowing to someone or something to modify it. If the device is switched on, you don't have to switch it off. That's the main rule and the main mistake that many experienced police officers do. They're thinking that way, by switching it off, they will prevent the data from modifying. That's a huge mistake. I'll explain you why. And if it is the device is unlocked, the other thing to do is to prevent it from automatic locking by timer. There is a setting on the iPhone that prevents the device from being locked. This is also important, because some of the data stored on the iPhone, it is available only after first unlock, or only if the device is unlocked. And if the device is already unlocked, some of the data may be available for the analyzers. The best way to prevent the data from being modified on the iPhone is, or any other smartphone actually, is to put the device into a Faraday bag. That's a special package, or how to describe it, that isolates the iPhone from all the signals, and it won't be able to connect to any Bluetooth or to Wi-Fi or to GSM network. Otherwise, if you won't do that, and if the Find My Phone service is enabled on the iPhone, it is possible that the owner of the device will just send either put the device into the lost mode or even remotely wipe it. And there were some cases when the devices were wiped before any information was extracted from there. And so the first two things is to remove the SIM card from the iPhone and to put the device into a Faraday bag. And also don't let it discharge to connect to a charger. In addition to the passcode lock, there is the Touch ID available in all 64-bit devices, starting from the iPhone 5S. That's not exactly a replacement of the passcode, and it doesn't add any security to the iPhone. That it just makes unlocking a bit more convenient, and you should know that the fingerprint unlocking works only for 48 hours after unlocking with the passcode. So if you won't unlock your iPhone using during just 2 days, next time you will have to enter the passcode to unlock it. And also, after the device is being rebooted or switched off and switched on, then you'll be able, at the first time, you have to unlock it using the passcode, not the fingerprint. And so, if the Touch ID is enabled, you still can do something. The Touch ID can be used, for example, to establish the trust relationship between the iPhone and the desktop, Windows or Mac. And it is really important. I will also tell why. But it cannot be used, for example, for installing the jailbreak on the iPhone. Main three methods for the iPhones to get all the information from there. The logical acquisition. Basically, it is just creating the backup copy of the device using the iTunes or using any other third-party software. There is a physical acquisition. That's creating a copy of the memory chip, but not the methods I have mentioned earlier, but using the software. And the third method is the over-the-air acquisition of the information. That's basically backups also created in the iCloud, or this is the some information that can be synced between the device and the Apple iCloud. And even if the iCloud backups are disabled, still the iPhone syncs a lot of information between the device and the Apple Cloud. Every of those methods has his own pros and cons, and they're not always applicable, and there is no single answer to the question what methods you have to select to get all the information from the iPhone. Also about the passcode log, as I said, the passcode is used in the full disk encryption of the memory chip, and there is no way to just bypass that passcode log. There are several devices on the market, mostly they're produced by Chinese companies, by the way, like an IP box. That's a combination of the hardware and software. Some of them pretend to be the keyboard that you can connect to the iPhone, and they're just trying all possible combinations of the passcode. But in the iOS, there is an option to delete all the information stored on the iPhone after 10 unsuccessful attempts. And if the information is erased, there is absolutely no way to get it back because wiping the information means the wiping of the encryption keys that are used in full disk encryption of the iPhone memory chip. And some of those devices, they tell that they can somehow work around that. For example, they may disconnect, and some of the chains on the hardware, and to prevent the iPhone from deleting that information. We have tried a few, and we have found that in reality, in fact, they work only in about 10% of cases, and they have many limitations on the hardware, on the iOS version, and so on. And there is a very good chance that by using that device, you'll delete all the information in the iPhone completely. And so yeah, I strictly wouldn't recommend it. There is also an obvious way that it works only for law enforcement people. You cannot just go to Apple and ask them to provide them with the information stored there. But there is a special page on the Apple website describing how they process the law information requests and how you can get and what kind of information you can get from Apple, from the device itself and from the cloud. And there is some statistics for the second half of 2015 year. There is no more fresh information. Mostly Apple work on the physical devices and only I think about, it's not visible for me either, that's for 6% of the requests sent to Apple are about the information stored in the iCloud. And they describe in details what information they can provide, but the data format provided by Apple, it's not really convenient for further analysis. And also, in reality, Apple stores much more than they say. And it didn't help in recent San Bernardino shooter case. Some of the backups was available in the Apple iCloud, but it was about 2 or 3 months old, and so it didn't contain any important evidence for that case. So before choosing the proper acquisition method for the iPhone, you have to answer quite a lot of questions. There is a kind of checklist, whether the device is passcode protected or not, do you have the iCloud credentials, and do you have physical access to the computer the device has been connected to, Whether the device is already jailbroken or not, I should say that in the wild, there is not much devices jailbroken, probably just 2 or 3%, but the jailbreaking is really important, and it is really good if you can jailbreak the iPhone, and that way, I'll show you why, you'll be able to extract much more information from the iPhone than without jailbreaking. And you also have to understand what version of iOS is running, and of course, what is the device itself. And only by answering all those questions, you can select the proper acquisition method. So as I said, there are 3 options to provide a local backup of the iPhone. Sorry, I haven't removed the name of our software that can do that. I don't want to advertise it. The second option is to perform the jailbreak and to perform physical acquisition. And the third, and probably most popular option nowadays, is to perform the iCloud backup. And if there is no iCloud backup, no fresh iCloud backup available, there is some way sometimes to create the iCloud backup even from the locked phone, and same for local backup. Making local backup is really easy. Just connect to the device to the computer, start the iTunes, and ask it to produce the backup. But there is one important thing there that actually there are more. First of all, iTunes will ask you to unlock the device if it is locked. And if you don't know the passcode, it will be really easy to create the backup. And second, backup may be password protected. And it is important to know that in contrary with many other data encryption formats and applications, the password on the iTunes backup is not a property of the file, not a property of the backup itself. That's a property of the device itself. And once you have set the device to the iTunes backup, whether you connect to the device to any other computer, Mac or Windows, and it doesn't matter, the new backup will be created with exactly the same password and with the same encryption. And there is no way to just reset that backup or to create the new backup without the password or with a different password. And so, if there is a setting to encrypt backup, then the device itself will only send the encrypted data to the host computer with the all information stored on the iPhone. And to break that backup password, you'll have to run through really time-consuming and hard to implement the dictionary attacks, brute force attacks, and whatever, and they're really slow. What about if the device is locked and you have to unlock it to create a backup? There is one workaround exists. Once you connect the device to a new computer, PC or Mac, you have the question on both on the desktop and on the device whether you trust that computer. And if you click yes, what happens is that special lockdown, so-called lockdown or parent records are being created on both the device and the desktop computer, and they work till you reboot or turn off the computer. And using those lockdown records, here is where you can find them on Windows in Apple Lockdown folder and on macOS in VARDB lockdown. They're just a binary files with encryption keys. And using those files, you can create backup on any other computer, and even if the device is locked and if you don't know the passcode. And what else you can do with those lockdown records? You can not just create a backup, but for some older versions of the iOS, up to iOS 8.3, you can access some other services, special system services running on the iOS operating system like Faraday, FC, and house arrest, and to get even more information from the iPhone than the backup service returns. And starting from iOS version 8.3, the only way you can get using the lockdown record is the backup itself, and also there is still no way to fool the passcode protection. And if the passcode is set on the backup, then all you can do is passcode protected backup. So lockdown records, they still can expire. They work for a very long time. In our experiments, they worked for at least six months or so. But they immediately invalidated once the device is rebooted, unfortunately. As I said, that no unencrypted data leaves the iPhone, and there is no way to get it until you get the very old version of the iOS, where some additional services were working, and there is no way to reset or remove it. All you can do from the locked phone without the parent record is you can still access some of the information, including the serial number of the device, which may help if you are going to request some information from Apple. You can get the iOS version, you can get the baseband version, and something like that. What about the breaking the iTunes backup password? If you manage to get the encrypted backup and how to break the password, the encryption is strong. That's in iOS version 10 and before, there is a PBKDF function with SHA-1 hash, and there is as many as 10,000 hash operations, and on a single desktop PC on the CPU, you can just get a couple of thousand passwords per second. You can accelerate the recovery by using the GPUs from NVIDIA or AMD. You can get the speed of, on a single GPU, single desktop video card, you can get 150,000 passwords per second, which make the password of 7 or even 8 characters crackable in a reasonable time. And funny, in iOS version 10, that was a bug, and Apple has fixed it. They have stored an additional and much simpler hash, just a single SHA to 256 with just a single iteration. And so even on the CPU, we were able to get as many as 6 million passwords per second on a single CPU, even without the GPU. But Apple has already fixed that in more recent beta versions of iOS 10. And so long and complex passwords are much harder to break. You have to use the advanced dictionaries, use some additional rules based on the human factor. For example, adding some digits at the end of passwords and so on. The other two approaches exist. First, you may try to extract if the person, the owner of that phone, connected it to the Mac computer, then there is a very good chance that the password to that backup is stored in the OS6 keychain, and so it's easy to get it from there, if the Mac computer is not locked itself, obviously. And the second way is try to use the different passwords that person use and that are easier to break, because most of the people are using the same passwords, because it's too hard to remember all the passwords for all the services and devices. So once you got access to encrypted iTunes backup, what do you have to do next? First, you have, of course, to decrypt backup and to be able to analyze it and to extract all information from there. Extract media files, for example, images, and get access to EXIF data that stores location information. Analyze the calls and to see whom that information called some time ago and what nodes he has created. What are the most commonly used contacts in his contact list, and so on. And the next very important thing is to decrypt the keychain. Keychain is the storage in the iPhone, probably the most important information in the iPhone that stores all the passwords to other services, the encryption keys, the authentication tokens, the passwords to mail accounts, it may even store the password to the Apple iCloud, and that way, by breaking the local iTunes backup, you might be able to access the iCloud backup which is new, or in reverse, it is, for example, old and created several months ago and then contains some deleted information. You can also try to extract the passwords or authentication tokens for other accounts, such as Google and Microsoft, and get access from Microsoft the recovery key for the BitLocker and for Apple File Vault. And by getting access to mail, you might be able to reset the passwords to some other account, and of course get access to the person's social networks, to their conversations in different messengers and so on. Physical acquisition allows you to get much more information than logical acquisition because it extracts the bit-by-bit copy of the memory chip. Although I should say that there is no way to extract the deleted data. Although you get all the data from the chip, but for the one that has been deleted, there is no way to recover the encryption keys that were used to encrypt the data on those unallocated records. And also there is quite a lot of limitations on the iOS versions and on memory models. That was much easier in the times of iPhone 4 and older models. There was a vulnerability, and so the exploit in the boot ROM. And even without the knowledge of the passcode, you were able to break into the iPhone 4 and create a bit-by-bit copy of everything. And you shouldn't install the jailbreak and break the passcode and so on. On newer devices, it is much harder, and you have to be able to install the jailbreak. And for modern versions of the iOS, no jailbreak is available. But still, the other important benefit of the physical acquisition is that way you can decrypt all the keychain records from the iPhone, including those that are encrypting using the hardware-specific key and storing, for example, the Google Authenticator data, which you won't be able to extract from the local iTunes backup. But speaking of the hardware, there is a full support of the physical acquisition only for older models, and for more modern models starting with iPhone 4S and up to iPhone 5C, you have to jailbreak the phone. And for the 64-bit versions, you cannot perform actually the complete physical acquisition. There is a kind of logical when you can get access to the whole file system, which is also quite nice, but still you cannot recover and decrypt the keychain. And for OS X, there is no jailbreak at this time. And installing a jailbreak is also actually a nightmare. Even if you have the compatible OS version, there is still no guarantee that you'll be able to do that. And you have to disable the backup password protection. You have to disable the Find My Phone, and so you have to know the password from Apple ID. And so that method nowadays, I should say that it almost doesn't work. Yeah, there is quite a lot of issues. And for most modern versions, for iOS 9.3, there is even more issues, and so you can use it only at your own risk. So, if there are no other options left, what you can try, you can create the iCloud backup if it's not available yet or if it is outdated, and if it is there, you can extract it from the cloud. There is no standard way to do that, and Apple doesn't provide any way to access the iCloud backup except by just restoring your iPhone from backup. But the good thing is that iCloud backups, they can be forced from the device itself, but also they're being created automatically once a day. If the device is locked, the screen is locked, and device is connected to the known Wi-Fi password, and the device is connected to a charger. So you can use that method if you don't access to any iTunes backups, and even if you don't have access to the device itself. If you have the locked phone and you have no option to create a local backup or perform the physical acquisition, there is sometimes, not always, but sometimes a way to force the device to make a backup. Of course, if an option to create iCloud backups is enabled on the device, you have to bring it to the non-Wi-Fi network. The device have been connected before. Of course, you have to know the ID of that network. Connect to a charger, lock the screen, and leave it overnight. And there is a very good chance that the new iCloud backup will be created. But you have to remember that if the device have been rebooted and it wasn't unlocked before you connected to a charger and to Wi-Fi, it won't connect to Wi-Fi because the saved Wi-Fi passwords are encrypted in the keychain that way that they're being decrypted only after first unlock. And so device won't get a chance to connect to Wi-Fi network, and so it won't create a backup. Obviously, to get iCloud backup from the cloud, you have to know the Apple ID. And sometimes you just have an access to the email connected to that Apple ID, but it's important to know not to reset the Apple ID password because before you have created the new iCloud backup. That was also an issue with the San Bernardino case. Instead of trying to create a new fresh backup into the iCloud of that phone, the FBI just get access to the owner of that Apple ID, and they have reset the password to Apple ID, and but after password reset, the iPhone won't be able to create a new backup until you enter that new Apple ID password to the device itself. But they won't be able to do that because the device itself is locked. If you do know the Apple ID and password, the problem could be that that account may use the two-factor authentication. And so to get access to iCloud backups, you either have to have the access to secondary authentication factor or the binary authentication token that has been used already for that account. The other problem that cloud backups might not exist at all, or they can be very old. And if you don't have the Apple ID password, you may look into the computer, PC or Mac, that had the same iCloud account set up. And that way, the computer saves the authentication token to that account. And that token can be used to access to gain the full access to the account without the password and without the second authentication factor. The iCloud authentication tokens might expire after some time, although for iOS 9 and 10, we can see that they don't expire for several months. And if the Apple ID password is being changed, then the tokens being invalidated immediately, and you don't have a chance to get anything from iCloud anymore. And that way you'll have to again to enter the correct password and to pass through the two-factor authentication. Apart from iCloud backups, what other information is stored in the Apple iCloud? These are photos. If you have enabled on the device the iCloud photo library or photo streams, then the photos are also stored in the iCloud, if the owner of the account have enough space. And a couple of months ago, we have found that even after deletion of the photos from the iCloud photo libraries, the photos are still stored on the Apple servers. After we have released the software that is able to download the so-called deleted images from the Apple iCloud, Apple silently fixed that issue. The names of the photos are still being available in the cloud, but the files, all the files are returned with a 0 size. So I think that Apple haven't deleted that data completely, but just moved to the other servers that are not available to any third parties, probably except for some law enforcement. If you go to the iCloud settings screen onto any iOS device, you'll see that many of other information is being synced. There's your complete internet activity, including it doesn't say what is that under the Safari, but in reality it is bookmarks, all the open tabs on all of the devices connected to the same account, the reading list, so cached pages, and the complete browsing history, and probably even search history. We haven't discovered that yet, but I think it is there. And also, of course, the contacts, the notes you create under the iCloud account, your calendars, your wallet, even if you think that you don't use it, some information is there. The Apple Maps, they're not as popular as Google Maps, but still, it keeps a lot of information like searches and bookmarks and so on. The books, you can see no book switch there, but the books are there. The HomeKit data, probably some health data, so Apple says that health data is not uploaded to the cloud. Your new subscription, weather, and some information that probably not so interesting. And also the keychain, that's not the same as the keychain stored on the device itself. That's an iCloud keychain, and it is protected much better than the other information. It has mandatory two-factor authentication, even if you don't enable the two-factor authentication to the account itself. But the iCloud keychain is protected with a 2FA always. Well, there is even more. If you look at the page on the Apple website, telling about the government information request, there is quite a lot of information there. Account information, everything you provided to Apple once you created the iCloud, when creating the iCloud account, how much storage is occupied and how much data is free. All your contact information, including the shipping and billing address and some of the data on your credit cards. The information on the connected devices, you can see it now on the iPhone. You can go to the Apple ID and see all your devices that either access to your iCloud account, including both Windows and Mac computers, including the serial numbers, the phone number, the email for the phone, and the date of the latest backup. Your cloud email, your retail and online store transactions, family sharing data, and recently discovered the iMessage and FaceTime metadata. Apple still says that they don't keep any information related to iMessage and FaceTime, but at least we now know that they store some metadata, the contacts you have contacted through iMessage and FaceTime, the date and time, and probably something else. And also, of course, the locations of all devices that have the Find My Phone enabled. About the two-factor authentication, if you really worry about the security of your Apple iCloud account, I would strongly recommend you to enable the 2FA. Apple has introduced the two-step verification first, about 2 years ago after the Celebgate. But two-step verification is not a real protection, and there are still some workaround for it. And for the two-factor authentication is stronger. Once someone is trying to access your iCloud account, you immediately get the notification on all the other devices connected to the same account, and first indicating the IP address and even a kind of map on your device, saying what location the device was accessed from. And then the device shows that if you have to manually press allow or don't allow to access your cloud account. And if you press allow, then the 6-digit code will be displayed on your device, and you have to enter it on the other device you are trying to access that from. For all the two-step verification, that was one possible way to use a recovery key, which was just a fixed key stored on the account, and it could be used for accessing any information in the iCloud, and it was fixed, so you had the chance, of course, to invalidate it. there is no such one for two-factor authentication anymore, and so I should say that it is stronger. And also for two-step verification, when trying to access the account, you was able to select what particular device to use to pass the second factor. For two-factor authentication, that's not an issue anymore, and a notification is being sent to all the devices connected. What you should also know about the Apple iCloud, that's a bit of technical information, that actually all the data, not just the iCloud backups, but also the information synced between your iOS devices and the iCloud, it is stored not on the Apple itself. Apple itself still don't have their own big storages for big data. They're just building the ones. And so all the cloud data is currently stored on third-party providers, including Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and also we have seen AT&T storages. The data is encrypted, that is right, using the strong 256 encryption. But the encryption keys are stored along with the data. And you have no way to select your own encryption, your own passwords or encryption keys or whatever to protect your data. And so the person or the organization or law enforcement or hackers or whoever who get the physical access to the data storages where your iCloud data is stored, they get everything. They get not just the data, but also the encryption keys, and so they can decrypt. Apple says on the same page about the government information request that for non-US accounts, the data may be stored on the local providers like in China or in Russia, but still they store the encryption key on the US service managed by Apple. We haven't checked that yet, and that's what we're going to do. But to be honest, I'm not 100% sure about that. And so they're saying that they do that so the owner of the data storages won't be able to decrypt the data, but we never know. And two-factor authentication is a good protection, but it's not mandatory like for business, like for bank accounts. And the only feature in the iCloud that is protected with 2FA, always protected, is the iCloud Keychain. But it contains the most critical data, including your credit card data, and so that's a good to know that at least that information is protected. And if you don't enable the two-factor authentication, then when someone accesses your iCloud data, you won't receive any kind of notification. Of course, if one can just go to the browser and type iCloud.com and enter your Apple ID and password, you will get a notification. But if one uses the third-party software to access the iCloud data at the lower level, notifications will not come. I have no idea why. After Jailbreak, notification did come. That was about 2 years ago. But it seems that Apple played with that just a little bit, and after 2 months, they disabled the notifications coming. And also I should know that Apple stores much more data than they actually say. And where we are discovering, using the low-level protocols, we're discovering just more and more data stored in the iCloud. And there are some sources recently said about the, for example, about the iMessage metadata, and no document at Apple even mentioned that. And there is no standard way to check what information is stored on Apple, and there is no API or no standard software to access that information, at least to see what is stored there. And comparing the different acquisition methods, again, every of them has its own pros and cons and can be applicable in some cases and not applicable or just dangerous in others. For logical backups, it's most easiest to do, and it works with all the devices and all versions of iOS. But you won't be able to do anything with the Passcode locked device until you have access to the parent record. And also you may encounter the password protected backup, and you'll have to spend quite a lot of time and resources and your knowledge to break that password. Physical acquisition is not really useful nowadays with the modern devices because it works only if you can install the jailbreak, which is in most cases not the case. And so I would say that only accessing the data stored in the iCloud, whether these are backups or synced data and other information, that's the method that allows to get all the information from all the devices connected to that account. You have to know the Apple ID and password, of course. Apple ID is actually very easy to get, and there are quite a lot of methods for obtaining someone's suspect's password, or you can access that information even without the password or by using the authentication tokens. Just a couple of words about Android and Google. If you think that Apple is a kind of evil while Google is not, that's not the case. Google stores even more, and they're using different approach. They also have backups. If you have the Android phone, you can enable some backups. But actually, inside backups, there is no much information. That's just your lock screen, the image used there, your Wi-Fi password saved there, some application settings, and so on. Android now has API to store, for example, third-party application data in backups on the Google account, but almost nobody from the developers are using it. But still, Google used a different approach, as I said, the synchronization mechanisms. And if you enable it, and sometimes you don't even know that it is enabled, but it is. Most of the information is being synced between your Android devices and your Google account, including all of your internet activities, all the data you type and you enter into in the Google Chrome, and the password saved there, sometimes even the credit card numbers, or at least the last 4 digits. And what you cannot disable, for example, is all the device and application activities, including the serial numbers of your devices, application names and versions, and the exact date and time when you access their particular applications. And data is not encrypted there in Google, and it isn't really easy to get it. You can, of course, go to the Google dashboard and see some of the information that is being synced and even download it into a really huge zipper hive, and the information there will be not really good structured, some in the text files, some in the CSV files, or even in the JSON data, which is not really easy to analyze. And Google doesn't provide any convenient way to delete most of this data. And I would really recommend you to log into the Google dashboard and download everything from there to see what Google has on you. Here are some of the tools you can use to get information from the devices for both logical, physical, and iCloud. Of course, you can use the iTunes itself. That's the first step to create a backup and then to analyze it. There are a couple of open source tools, iLoot and Inflatable Donkey, to download iCloud backups. They don't work well, and they don't fully support two-step verification and two-factor authentication, and they may fail for many of the accounts and for many of the data. So they're not really reliable, but they may work. There is also a very nice library called libmobile device that actually emulates what the iTunes drivers really do, and it allows to access the iOS devices directly from your application without the iTunes, and even to force the creation of the backup. And there is also application available in the source code iMobile device based on the libmobile device, and with it you can get, for example, some of the data from the Passcode locked iOS devices, like a serial number and the iOS version. And if you do have the parent record, You can use it to create the backup of the device and to access some other information. And of course, there is quite a lot of commercial information. Or you can read the book. I'm actually one of the authors, and it has been just released a couple of weeks ago, and it is available on Amazon. Or you can drop me a line and get a free copy from me. Okay, thank you very much. That's it.